That's the invitation of Good Friday, right? Like everything can be killed and everything can be new, right? Like on some level, if God says, I'll submit to death,
Mhm.
then there's nothing that like it might be your addiction to managing your kids. It might be your addiction to saying everything right
Yeah.
that your Trump supporting friends like. That thing that you cling to,
Yeah.
that you think God's not clinging to it. See,
Right.
what you know, with all the theologies about the cross, right? What you can't deny is that his hands are open. There's
All right. Well, welcome back to the Evangelical Anglican. Today, we are doing our Good Friday episode with Scott Jones. It's a great conversation that I had with Scott, including it got a little emotional at points, um, and and I think there's a beauty to that, and I just let it record, um, because the cross of Christ does something to people, even us uh, heartless theologians and pastors most of the time. Um, and I hope that as we kind of put that out there, it'll do something to you as well. It's not us doing it, but maybe that as you experience, what I mentioned on Palm Sunday episode, the Palm Sunday episode, that there will be something in your life that you want God to deal with that he doesn't deal with the way you'd like him to do it. He either allows it to stick around, he either seemingly doesn't give you power over your sins, and therefore you wallow in more shame and guilt. And yet, then there's the cross of Christ, in which he reminds you um, of his overwhelming love for sinners, for people who cannot get their life together. And if you are someone who cannot get your life together, no matter how much you've tried, Jesus loves you. Like he really loves you. And he really did die for you. So, as we talk about this today, it is appropriately personal, I think, for both of us, as we look at that from which we want to hide our eyes, which is this man, this good and righteous man, suffering death on the cross for us. So, without further ado, I give you my conversation with Scott Jones about Good Friday. All right, we're back for round 3 of our Holy Week conversation. Back with Scott Jones. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing great, man.
It's good to see you again. We're both wearing black as we discuss the blackest of all days, not Black Friday, which is different than Good Friday.
What do you when you think about t-shirts, right? Like it's a decent t-shirt, right? How much do you think about like the black t-shirt?
I love the black T-shirt. It's simple. It goes with everything, uh, and it's slimming, which I need desperately.
Yeah, the V-neck too. I mean, the my girlfriend is like very into these black V-neck t-shirts.
It's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, we
it's
are
very
talking
goofy.
about Good Friday, a day in which we remember um, the the death of Christ. Um, Good Friday for me growing up in the kind of Baptist non-denom world. Good Friday is kind of a fun service. I mean, it's powerful and it's somber, but it has this like celebratory tone to it. Um, you're kind of singing these big songs, and it's very moving. When I came into the Anglican tradition, our Good Friday service is just very stark and barren, um, and somber. And I remember thinking, like, wow, this is a just a really different feel.
Yeah, so like Stanley Hauerwas told a funny story once. He said like liberal Protestants, they just don't know anything about anything. And, one time I was at this Episcopal church and they said, maybe we should do the Eucharist on Good Friday just to lighten things up. And Harold said, he was like, that's the one day we don't, we don't, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think there's that, uh, yeah, there's that dimension to it. And, I was, so when I was a kid, I was not raised very religious. I mean, we were Methodists, right? So that inoculates you from religion. So my parents didn't go to church, but once in a while they would make me do these things, which were very random. Like, okay, you need to get your God and Country badge for the Scouts, or you need to do. And I was like, okay. And when we were doing the God and Country badge, and one of the guys said, so we had to answer how we felt about Good Friday. And one of the guys who's about 2 years older than me, 3 years older than me, said, "Good. We feel good about it." And and I said to my mom, like, I said the same thing because he was 2 years older than me, or 3 years older. I said good too. She's like, "No, we shouldn't feel good about it." But isn't that interesting? There should be some joy, um, when you look at this is what von Balthasar would say, right? When you look at the crucified Savior and you see the mirror of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's why, like, if you look at, um, like, I have a friend who, you know, got into theology, and so much of theology takes you away from kind of, especially, so it's kind of the normal story of like the evangelical. The more you get into theology and tradition and liturgy, you start to get away from, you're like, oh, N.T. Wright and all these people. Like, I don't, I'm not saying it's not true. I just, that whole so individualized view of, you start talking about other atonement theories, like, oh, substitutionary atonement, like that's one of many, but I want to talk about these other ones. Um, and you could do all that, and that's fine, and you kind of go off and run into all your theological things. But he would write songs, and I noticed, the songs he would always write, you know, were all about Christ's death on the cross for sinners. So it's like, yeah, I mean, your mind can go all kinds of places, and you can find all these things interesting. But when it comes to, what I was thinking is like, how many great, beautiful, and still sung today hymns come back to the cross of Christ. you know, like,
Hey, yeah, but
there's
also,
something about it that grabs our heart.
so I was doing a podcast with my friend Dave Fitch, who I love, Anabaptist, neo-Anabaptist, hates everything about substitutionary atonement, right?
Yeah.
And he said, "It's not contextually relevant, man." And I said to him, "Why do people go to see Les Miserables every single time? Like, you can remake that musical 1,000,000 times and everyone will still, because it's fundamentally, even C.S. Lewis, right, who is not a substitutionary atonement guy, he rubs up against this, right? He can't get away from it. Like,
Yeah.
M. Scott Peck says in People of the Lie, whenever evil is overcome, there's some sacrifice. Like, and
Yeah.
at the heart of this is the universal truth. This is, I mean, the book I want to write, which maybe I will someday, right? Is the natural theology of the cross, because natural theology today, right? People doubt creation because they're like, oh my gosh, the evolution, it doesn't make sense. Red and
All right.
two can
So,
walk.
for a viewer, what is natural You're using that term. What is natural theology?
I mean, the kind of theology that okay, outside of the Bible, right? If because everybody thinks about God, right? Even
Right.
the
Right.
atheists think about God. Everybody's God obsessed. So what we do without revelation, right, without having the Bible, is we just start thinking what God would be like if we made God in our image, and we build
Hmm.
this thing, right? And some of it's not gonna be all wrong, right? Because God is present to us always. So
Yeah.
none of our theological constructions can be all wrong. Um, but
Although the Anabaptists actually get very close
yeah,
to
they're
being all wrong.
well, they're the worst, but you know, that's why we had to that's why we had to kill so many of them. But very strongly. We killed them very strongly, powerfully.
I was
We're
wondering when
very,
that would.
very
Yeah.
strongly.
We had to get
Um,
the Trump impression back.
yeah, no, so I think that natural theology is probably always gonna be with the church, right? We'll always have to deal with how people think and talk about God without the gospel and without the Bible. But
Yeah.
how do we build on it, right? And I think the new natural theology is around shame and guilt, right? I mean, the old natural theology was on creation and the order of things, and people don't buy into that anymore. The new natural theology is everyone trades in shame and guilt. It's almost like we're addicted to shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then where the proclamation comes in is you don't need to be. Like
Yeah.
this is what's so radical. He will take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so to your point, natural theology. Then you use the word theology of the cross. So for instance, Martin Luther, our boy, he kind of famously had a critique of. I'm not saying he critiqued all natural theology as this, but he kind of called theology that our kind of default operating system theologically. He called a theology of glory, and a theology of glory in Luther's kind of working it out is a theology that tries to get at God apart from the cross, kind of going in and around. It'd be like all Palm Sunday. It'd be like if the story ended on Palm Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Like if that was the end.
Climbing the
That's
ladder.
what the theologian of glory wants, is for God to come in. And what I said in the, I mentioned this in the intro that I recorded for our Palm Sunday episode, is like there is a frustration that we have with God when we have a to-do list of things, like internally problems. The people in Jerusalem had a to-do list of things internally to Jerusalem that they wanted God to address. The Romans, the sinners, the people that, despite all of our attempts, they will not reform themselves and stop doing this stuff. Um, we're waiting on God to come in and wipe, and then the Romans who are oppressing us, we're waiting on God to come in and wipe all of them out. And I think a lot of times as Christians, we expect God to come in and deal with all of the problems that we have kind of
Yeah.
assigned,
Yeah.
in our internal Trello board of these are God's to-do lists in our hearts. And then there's a disillusionment that happens in the Christian life when he doesn't do it. At least he doesn't permanently a lot of times. Like you might, fix one thing and you're like, wow, God's real. And then, but before you know it, it's popped back up, or you realize like that wasn't even. I remember when like I got rid of um like I stopped looking at social media so much, and I thought this is going to make me a better dad. And then I found out I just found other things to distract myself from the vulnerability that my kids required of me. Right? So like you're like, oh no, the problem really wasn't that; it was actually much much worse. Um, and so God does that, where He doesn't come in and fix the issue. And the theologian glory, that really bothers, because what we want is God to be like a one-to-one. I have a problem. Yo, I'll solve it. Check out the hook while the DJ anyways. Um, that I have a problem, God fixes that problem. And therefore God is useful to me. And what God is, Luther was saying, that's the natural theology of mankind. Um, but what God demands in the cross is actually, I'll be the captain here. I will tell you what the problems are, and I'll fix the problems when I'm ready to fix the problems. And you just kind of have to suffer waiting on me as I do what my work in you. And that work is going to be alien and hidden and um most of the time seem like nothing's happening. Right?
And there is
So, and that's what
something
Luther called a theology of the cross.
and there is something in the cross in an age of social media culture, right? Where everything is curated, right? Like I'm the artist of the selfie, right?
Right.
Like I can take a great selfie and everyone likes my photos, right? And it's just so great for me. It's so like the affirmation. Oh, I love it. But what's amazing is Good Friday is almost like God saying, I don't want any likes. Like
Yeah,
I'm turning off the post.
yeah. Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah, this is and you guys are gonna try to take the picture of this thing and trying to make it something that we should be like worthy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
God is saying, "No, no, this is you can't like this post."
Yeah. And that is the fairest um criticism of substitutionary atonement. Because I do want to get back to the beauty of substitutionary atonement because I do believe in it wholeheartedly. But the fairest critique of it, what might be somebody like Gerhard Forde, who he was not so much in my reading. I'm not Lutheran, and I really haven't read it, but in my reading of it, he wasn't so much critiquing it as a thing going on behind the scenes, but he was critiquing me as the theologian who grabs hold of substitutionary atonement as a way to quickly get past this whole cross thing. You know, it, it is a way to,
Yeah, there's a difference between a theology about the cross and a theology of the cross.
yes, yeah. There's a difference between preaching about the cross and
Yeah,
preaching the
what the
cross.
cross, yeah.
Um, and that one of the things that stood out to me about when I first experienced like Anglican or more liturgical kind of Good Friday services is if they're done right. Now you can do it really bad and you can make it all about oppression. I did a Stations of the Cross one time, and it was like every station was like, Lord, as you were whipped, we think of those who are oppressed by corrupt financial system. And you're just like, geez,
Yeah.
this could have literally nothing to do with my actual
Well,
life.
because that's a way, like,
But that moves
sometimes
past it, right? That moves past the cross into politics.
I mean, some of these, like, liberal like in the PCUSA, there's this, every pastor in the PCUSA considers it very artful to write these prayers of confessions. And the problem is you usually feel better about yourself after the prayer of confession. You're like, "I'm not so bad." It's like,
Right.
"God, we could have shopped at the fair trade store 2 more times this week, but we didn't." Yeah, it's so self-indulgent, and it's all yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, there
So inviting the person into your head that grates on you, right? That's a long way to health. It's why, like, my progressive friends, like, hate John Fetterman. I love John Fetterman because he grates against all my sensibilities, right? And the cross
yeah, all
grates
cards
against
on the table. You are a Democrat,
liberal
uh,
Democrat.
a liberal Democrat.
Very progressive, very strong.
So any critique that you're making is an in-house critique. This is
Yeah,
not
but
a
I would so all my friends want to primary Fetterman, right? I'm gonna campaign for him. I'll go knock doors, largely because we always need this grading, like, thing, and that's what the cross is, right? It just is so offensive to our sensibilities,
right,
and it's just
right,
there.
right. Yeah, and and it's even almost the text. Um, in my church, we've been doing these Holy Week services, and in our lectionary, the lectionary we're using, the Holy Week services are basically each of the Gospels' passion narratives,
Yeah.
which are long. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody once said that the Gospels are basically passion narratives with long introductions, right?
It was Kaler, I think.
Okay. And and you can't help but think that's true when you're reading it because, you know, for instance, Luke will cover Jesus's 30 years of Jesus's life with he grew in wisdom and stature and honor among men, you know. And that's a whole, and then all of a sudden he's in his public ministry. And then 3 years of his life is covered in like half the book. But then like a week of his life is the whole second half of the book, including the last day of his life is, it just gets more and more text for less and less time. Um, and so reading the Gospels, I mean, if you were to just sit there and read Luke in one sitting, it would be so painfully obvious that he wants you to, as Pilate, and even sometimes in the text itself, they will all include things that Pilate literally will say, "Behold the man." You know, like they couldn't be more obvious. They want you to look at him. You know, to our Reformed friends, not visually in paintings, of course, but through the Word. But we
So let
don't
me
want to do that. We want to move past it.
so these are things that I find challenging, right? So this book is super important to me. God is the mystery of the world. I've never finished it. Um, I read it, I get through more and more every time. Um, a theologian has recently challenged me on this book, right? That it's just fundamentally wrong.
Hmm.
And I don't know like if he's right, a lot of things I bought into are fundamentally wrong. And I'm talking to one of our friends who who shall remain nameless, and he's teaching me theologically about this book. But that's the invitation of Good Friday, right? Like the everything can be killed, and everything can be new, right? Like on some level, if God says, "I'll submit to death,"
Hmm.
then there's nothing that like it might be your addiction to alcohol, it might be your addiction to managing your kids, it might be your addiction to saying everything right
Yeah.
that your Trump supporting friends like, or your well, there's no Biden supporters, right? Doesn't exist, but your leftist friends, whatever it is, like that thing that you cling to,
Yeah.
that you think God's not clinging to it.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what with all the theologies about the cross, right? What you can't deny is that his hands are open.
Yeah.
There's no closed fist.
Yeah. Yeah. There's times when I think like, uh, could there ever be anything, um, especially when you look at like politics, like politics it's so driven by entertainment now, the whole political, um, apparatus of media and nowadays, like for instance, e- every time there's a tragedy, I always think like, is this gonna be the thing that stops us? And kind of like 9/11 was, or like Pearl Harbor was, or these moments that we remember back in our history of like where all of a sudden all of the divisions didn't really matter just for a second. And what mattered was we were Americans. What matters was we were neighbors. Like literally, we were down the street from that because, and sometimes that's a common enemy because they don't care. It's not like Japan attacked the Republicans in Pearl Harbor. They attacked Americans and they didn't really care what political, line you were in. Um, and nowadays everything is so ingrained with meaning. It's not real meaning, but it's attempts to grab meaning. Um, that like there is no tragedy at this point that could ever just shut everybody up for a second. I think there's
Yeah,
this,
yeah, Nietzsche says this. Nietzsche says his definition of the sacred is what we all agree no one can laugh at.
hmm,
And 9/11 was the last sacred moment in my adult life, right? Like, none of it like,
yeah,
there just weren't that many 9/11 jokes, right, with stand-up comedians or something.
right,
It was the closest the country got to church.
right, right. Well, and I think stand up, not to go too far afield, but I would agree with Nietzsche in like, in the thing that you cannot laugh at in polite company. But I think stand-up comedians also show you that because they're usually willing to go there and they make the jokes that everyone goes, "Ooh," like they kind of poke at the sacred. But like, yeah, so there's a video that came out a while ago. It was focused on, it was like geared towards moms, and there was all these moms at this park. And they were all kind of meeting up, and they were all kind of starting to kind of bad talk each other based on their different parenting styles. Like one mom spanked, and the other mom like thought, like, why would you abuse your kids? Like, and one mom fed her kids unorganic food, and the other mom thought, and it was all these moms with all these different parenting styles, and they all hated each other, and they all thought, and it was just this vitriolic, gnashing of teeth, if that was ever put into video. And then one of the mom's strollers, the brake goes out, and the baby stroller starts to roll down the hill
Mm,
unattended. And the video is powerful because all these moms who hated each other and thought that each other were the problem, and thought we had nothing in common. All of a sudden, when this baby's rolling down this hill, they all turn and run after it. You know, and it was like a that could there be something that could inbreak in that would speak to us at our most common humanity, in which we all are on the same page, right?
yeah.
And of course, at the same page of that analogy is all of these moms love their kids, and they're all arguing about all of the but at the bottom of it, they love their kids, and when one kid is in a runaway stroller, it's everybody's kid, and they're all running after it. And I think the cross of Christ, when we really sit with it for a second, like it does begin to silence all of the noise of you know, it is the thing that is broken in to bring us all to even ground, right? Like, you know, all of our striving for meaning and goodness and purpose and value, and therefore with that, all of the ways in which we find that, especially by ostracizing other people, and kicking other people out, um, it all kind of fades into the background of this man is suffering. This man is being uh, surely, we esteemed him not. He's like a man that we hid our eyes. Um, and so there's something about us that I think longs for something to kind of break through the noise, but then there's also something that doesn't actually want to do it. I mean, we want to keep our little all these little things give us meaning, and to give those up, we're terrified of, and so we don't want to look at the cross. We
No,
want to
I
look at all
like,
the other stuff.
so I am a Curb Your Enthusiasm addict. Like, I
Yeah.
love that show. I watch it on repeat. And my girlfriend said to me, "It gives me anxiety." When she's like, "Larry David gives me anxiety."
Yeah, yeah.
But that's interesting, right? That's the cross, right? Like, I mean, on some level, right? Larry David has the courage to inhabit everything that's gross about human beings, right? Just
Mhm.
totally gross, and just portray it, right? And on some level, you either like that or don't, right? And I think most of most people, Erasmus is most people, right? Just think it's not that bad. It's the conditions is, and I think Larry David is the cross, right? And says, "No, it's really this bad. It is it is it
Yeah,
is it is really this bad, like,
yeah,
all the time." But that's not the whole story, right? I mean, there is, we have an advocate.
right. Yeah, I mean, something is so for one, we behold the cross, we behold the man, um, particularly a man who's done no wrong, and a man that we believed. I mean, one of the things that stuck out to me recently is it's not just that humanity killed God, which would be bad enough, but it's also that humanity declared themselves righteous for doing it. Like he's suffering, and the chief priests and the religious authorities believe that they're actually obeying, they're honoring God in doing so. I
Yeah,
mean, they actually think this is our proper worship. This is our proper keeping the Torah, keep guarding the law, protecting the people is to destroy this man. Um, and so the cross really does become the end of all human goodness, all human, not just, it doesn't render human goodness like obsolete, but it is the telos of like all human attempts to be good and righteous and beautiful on our own terms will end with us rejecting uh, this man who shockingly claimed to love weakness and ugliness and disease and
but the good news is when you die with him, he'll let you pick up some pieces, right? And there are some things there are some things about about us that he loves. That's why he died.
yeah,
And when you just give up and say, "I'm done," he will walk back. I mean, this is so the footprints poem, it's so dumb, right? It's so dumb. But these things are not all wrong, right? I mean, he wants to walk with us tenderly and rebuild some things. Like, it's beautiful.
what um what is it about that that's moving to you?
Uh, so I think I'm a professional no sayer to God sometimes, and but constantly finds ways to worm back into my life and and say yes to me.
Yeah,
And you think you can run, and you can't.
yeah, yeah. I think Luther called it the hound of heaven.
Yeah.
Um, there's an old hymn. I don't know how old it actually is, but we don't ever sing it in Anglican world. I only sang it at Presbyterian churches, so it was probably some Presbyterian wrote it. But um, the opening line, the title of the hymn is "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go,"
Yeah. It's
and
great.
that's just such a beautiful idea of like this overwhelming love that
There's a line in there, "You chase the rainbow through the rain."
I think that's this is my father's world.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh
No, I
no,
think
no,
it's
no, no, I think you're right.
yeah, that's but it's
And
so
feel the
in
promise is not vain.
yeah, it's so interesting that that's what God would do.
Yeah, it is an unrelenting um, and pursuing love that will not sometimes people I get people in my church, for instance, who especially younger people lately, who are like really not they don't like the whole predestination thing, election, all that makes them nervous. I get it. And one of the things I say is like, well, you know, sure, we can deal with some of the negatives of it, but if you don't view it, it's like when people talk about marriage as only as negatives. It's like, well, sure, you talk about it enough negatively, why do it? But if you talk about the positives of it, if you look at the other side, you might
Yeah.
you might get a more well-rounded view of it. And I think election and predestination always get this very um, negative view. Um, and I think those
Well,
questions are warranted.
like this, there's a great line in Star Trek, where Dr. McCoy says to Shatner, "Shouldn't we just put an experienced crew back on the Enterprise?" And Kirk says, "Galloping around the universe is a game for the young, Doctor." And there's some truth to that, right? Like, I mean, galloping around life is a game for the young, right? But
Yeah.
when you realize all of your recidivistic tendencies and all the things you say, well, just like you have so many kids, right? Like, and you'll just think, well, I'll just parent this one better, right? I won't do this, and you
Right.
do the same thing, right? Like,
Right.
and all this recidivistic sort of thing, that's why there's deliverance and predestination. That,
Yeah.
oh my God, there is a good God, and God is shepherding this story, and I don't have any control. But when you're young, you can't hear that, right? And
Yeah.
and and
Right.
and young
Right.
people, and we need young people to do these things, right? And there's probably, but what Paul Zoll has said is, if you get this, right? I remember one time he gave a talk, and he explained the Reformation so interestingly. He basically said it was just a bunch of self-aware guys that couldn't handle the repression. And he said that, when I I give these talks, and and the old people say, "Paul, this is great. We get it, but you can't say this you can't grow a church with this talk." And he said, "No, if the young people get it, they can live their life posthumously."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the
Live.
invitation. Yeah.
Right. Right.
That's the invitation, like, this 25-year-old kid, right, that's listening to this podcast, or is that your church, he or she might say, "I'll live my life posthumously at 25."
Yeah.
And how great would that be?
Right. Yeah. Uh, Paul Zoll wrote this book, "Who Will Deliver Us," and
My
the pr-
favorite
the
book of his.
the present power of the death of Christ. And at the end, has a chapter that it might be the best chapter in the book. I mean, all the chapters are really good, but it's called "Atonement in the Church," and it kind of lays out these practical ways in which the cross affects life in the church. And one of them he calls is the doctrine of the crucial concept of imputation. Um, that this idea that because of the death of Christ, God, as you're saying, um, reckons us as having a
Yeah,
completed righteous life. It's all done. And he says this: imputation has leverage on the problem of being human because it assures us that our value is infinite, while at the same time relieving us of the burden of having to prove it. And I love that. Like, it
yeah.
assures us that our value is infinite. Now, you can do that with people all day. Like in kind of modern America, we've done that. We've done the self-esteem thing. Your value, my kids know their value is infinite. um, But with that often comes this burden of, um, all right, so go and accomplish something because you're so valuable. You need to go live that out and prove it. Um, and Paul is saying imputation, which is where God reckons us righteous even though we're not actually righteous. He declares us to be righteous, so he imputes something onto us that's foreign and not coming from within. It it both solves the human problem of, do I matter, and is my life worth anything, by saying yes, but it also solves the burden of that pressure and that burden, by relieving us of the need to prove it. That we can live our lives, as you just said, I can't say that word. Post
Posthumously, yeah, we live them
posthumously,
posthumously, yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah, we just live it, yeah.
He also says, back to the election thing. One thing that stood out to me, um, he says that the cross of Christ, in addition to preaching, teaching, and experiencing justification by faith and imputation, pastoral ministry that is rooted in atonement will emphasize another primary concept. This is providence. The ministry of atonement helps to build our confidence that things will be well in the end, that God will provide for his people. This is the conviction of providence. It can transform the most sullen resentment. It is the long view that gives meaning to events that appear heartless or confusing. Consider a person who is fired from his job in mid-career. He's plunged into a harrowing crisis of confidence. Years later, he looks back. He sees that he lost a job but found his faith. A woman is jilted by the man she had determined to marry. All is lost. Years later, she comes to believe that the man walked out of her life so that she would find her best love, the good man to whom she is now married. And I love this line: at the heart of injustice, there is still a God who is good.
Yeah, and so I think what's hard for Christians is so you walk into church, right, and you get the Bible, right, and the Bible has an ordering, right, and Genesis starts and Revelation ends it, right, like, but the way to read it is from cross to creation, not creation to cross.
Yeah,
So when you start with the cross and you read backwards, and that's where
yeah.
Paul's at, like, as he is about almost everything. And I throw the gauntlet down, by the way, to our dear friend Bill Bohr. Uh, Paul's right about everything.
Well, and I think there is a pastoral, uh, I think, things like providence, um, things like that, even in the midst of what appears to be dereliction, abandonment, forsakenness, is actually the mysterious presence of God to bring about the redemption of the world. Um, and in a microcosm, it's the same place in our life, that in the places where we are most abandoned and afraid and um, hopeless, um, there is this undercurrent of God's providential love,
Yes.
um,
And
that
show up and
pastorally, yeah, that pastorally allows you as a pastor to just be patient with people.
yeah.
I mean, it's something that I've been talking a lot about on this podcast. Of so much of pastoral ministry today treats people as these objects to fix. Like, you come in with a
No, yeah, yeah, no.
oh, you have a problem in your marriage, we're gonna fix it. You come in, you got a drinking problem, we're gonna fix it. You come in with a, we're gonna fix it, which is really a way of objectifying people, because it treats people, you exist for us to fix you. We really don't know what we're gonna do with you afterwards. Um, so good luck. uh, Rather than, you're a person, you're a subject, you're a person, and you are suffering. And we've got anywhere between 20 to 30 years to work that suffering out. And what you're going to do is you're going to work that out in the context of a community of people who, like the moms with the runaway stroller, have all seen their deep unifying need,
Yes. Yes.
uh, uh, and have found a savior who is not unaware of that need, who has actually felt that very need and that very pain, um, and mysteriously has died and taken it all uh, into his own self. And there's a really beautiful patience that allows you to have with people, where you can just walk through life with them without feeling like you have to get them to a place.
Yeah, the opposite of love is control.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and on some level, this is what Jungel gets at, right? That God allows himself to be pushed outside of the camp.
yeah,
And and w when we love with an open hand, and not perfectly, none of us will ever do it perfectly, right? And that's why we all revisit the cross every single day of our lives, but the degree to which, like, we wanna get closer to God will be less control. It's not gonna be, "Okay, you're gonna run these Bible studies, do this thing, you're gonna show up." It's going to be in spaces and places where we just feel like we're drowning.
yeah,
And we don't need to be addicted to drowning, but, like,
yeah.
but but those places where where yeah,
It's
that's where
powerful. Yeah.
that's where we'll see God.
Amen. So this Good Friday, don't get past the cross too quickly, because
Yeah.
it might just be right there where you find healing. So we will, and of course, Good Friday is not the end of the story. To your point, to not be addicted to drowning. Christianity is not ultimately. It does absorb into itself the macabre and um, the ugly and the broken, but it's ultimately a religion of joy and
And hope.
peace and
Yeah.
hope. And we'll talk about that on Easter Sunday. Thanks, Scott.